The state of Minnesota has mandated that we provide for you some protocols and directions about dealing with the coronavirus. And so that's what this tape is about. I'm sure that you all know that this pandemic has spread throughout the world, creating havoc in societies everywhere. In Minnesota, we've had to take some steps dealing with that, and that has included closing our restaurant. But as we try to reopen, we need to set up some procedures that will protect us from the virus. I believe that the more you know about this virus, how it functions and what it does, the easier it will be for you to effectively protect yourself. It's called the coronavirus because it's surrounded by this spike glycoprotein S that makes it look sort of like the sun. The corona is important not because of that, but because that's how the virus gets into our bodies. So I'm going to explain that to you in a little bit. Viruses don't think and they don't direct their own behavior. They just follow evolution, so they just get pushed here and there with what succeeds. It turns out that what really works for them is to use this S protein to attach itself to one of the enzymes in our body and therefore gain entry into one of our cells in order to replicate itself. Everybody knows that we're full of biochemicals, and that we put chemicals into ourselves and that we use those chemicals to make ourselves, to harvest energy, generate tissues, and so forth. And because we are made up of those chemical pathways doing all that, various parasites and pathogens can utilize those systems in order to harvest energy from us. And that's exactly what happens with the virus. Human cells are contained within sort of envelopes, cellular membranes which hold them together, and embedded within those envelopes are enzymes and pumps and various chemicals which regulate all kinds of bodily functions. Sodium and calcium are great examples. They get pumped in and out and across membranes all the time to control various reactions and perform a variety of duties, rates of doing things and synthesis and so on and so forth. But the one we want to talk about here is a glycol protein. You can see it in the illustration by the red arrow. It's embedded in the cell membrane and is important as a part of a system that controls blood pressure, the renin-angiotensin system, or RAS. The two enzymes which form the main parts of this system are ACE and ACE2. ACE produces a chemical which is a vasoconstrictor and therefore raises blood pressure. ACE2 is a vasodilator and serves to lower blood pressure. That system is very important to our health, obviously, and maybe you know someone who is on an ACE inhibitor to lower blood pressure. People with high blood pressure are in particular danger with the coronavirus because the ACE2 is interfered with. So let's look at the S protein a bit and see how things go when the spike protein comes in contact with the exterior of our cells. What happens is that the spike protein is very attracted to the binding site on the ACE2 enzyme and attaches itself. As I said, that site is normally used for a completely different purpose, but the virus has evolved to fit perfectly. And as soon as it does that, the virus opens up exactly like a little envelope. And when that happens, the membrane fuses with the cell membrane, and everything inside the virus comes into the cell. Inside the cell is where most of the action of living is going on. This is important because it puts the genetic material of the virus, the RNA, into the cell's interior. I know you've all seen this picture with the red spikes of the S protein on the exterior of the virus. One of these spikes embeds itself into the ACE2 receptor, and then another membrane enzyme, TMPRSS2, opens the envelope. It's important when the RNA enters the cell because it comes into contact with the cell's translation machinery. This means that the virus RNA template causes a cell to begin to manufacture more virus. Ribosome is a manufacturing enzyme which uses genetic code to produce proteins. You can study this picture to see how the host ribosome forms new viral protein. The human cell is now taken over by instructions from the virus and produces those instead of what it would normally produce, other parts of us. We become a little virus factory, and that's what makes us sick, because those foreign proteins made by the RNA, ribosomes, create allergic and inflammatory reactions within our cells. The cough, the fever, and eventually the pneumonia and the other symptoms show this, and that's what can kill us. And so different parts of the body have different levels of susceptibility to this virus. If you know that your tongue is very likely to take the virus in, for example, and that your skin doesn't, or if you know that what they call a mucosal tissue, like your nose and your mouth and other soft and damp parts of you, are vulnerable, then you can know that you must wash your hands thoroughly before touching those parts. Those kinds of places are where the ACE2 receptors are, and are where the virus can attach itself and infect you. Understanding this basic concept can help you know how to protect yourselves. Okay, now that you all understand why it's so important to keep this virus away from your soft, wet tissues like the inside of your mouth, you can also understand why it's important for you to keep washing your hands all the time. Because if you get the virus on your hands and then you unthinkingly scratch your eye or rub your nose or something like that, the virus can get in there. In the light of that, Jillian would like for you all to watch an additional video having to do with proper hand washing techniques. So I'm going to put the link up on the screen here so you can watch this. Also, I'd like to ask you to go back and watch this video again. Maybe turn the sound off and go through it slowly, stopping and starting it so you can make sure you read everything that's on every screen. So you really get a grip of what's going on here, because knowledge is power and we want to try to keep this virus away from us. All right, thanks a lot.